I'm Stuart Preston, and this is the Stoned Ape Reports, where I have conversations with those who have changed their lives with the power of psychedelics. Please note, if you're considering working with psychedelics, stay legal and stay safe. Do your research, understand contraindications, test all substances. Psychedelics are not for everybody. I now have a book out titled The Grief Trip, How I Learned to Heal with Grief and Psychedelics. You can find it at thegrieftrip.com. 100% of proceeds go to the Ian Preston Memorial Fund to help support mental health and suicide prevention. Okay, back to the podcast. In this episode, I had the honor of speaking with my friend Ben. We talked about his 3-month excursion in Mexico with a Shipibo tradition plant medicine journey, including ayahuasca and the plant diet. He discussed intention, integration, and the consciousness of plants and more. So please enjoy this conversation with Ben. All right, Ben. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me again on the Stoned Ape Reports. It's a real honor to have you back, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Stuart. It's nice to be back here. I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. So, yeah, we talked a little over a year ago. I mean, I guess not counting our recent conversation at the coffee shop. But back then, a year ago, you shared, your journey in life, the things that you dealt with in the younger years, depression and some substance abuse, and how the psychedelics and plant medicines really helped you. And that was very insightful. Anybody who's curious, I think that was episode 16. And I recommend go back, and I'll put a link to it in the text to go back and listen to it. But now, I've learned that you just recently got back from a 3-month excursion in Mexico at a Shipibo Tradition Center, doing a lot of, ayahuasca, I guess four ayahuasca ceremonies per week, which is a lot. Like I told you, we were talking, I think that makes me want to purge just thinking about it. But that's a lot. I don't, 2 or 3 nights for me in a row, and I feel totally wiped out and drained. So I want to hear more about that. But I want to start off with kind of, in our first episode, we talked really about the transformation and how the medicines helped you in life. And I guess what I want to know now is why. Why did you go down and do this 3-month voyage journey, with all these ceremonies and all the other plant medicine and all the deep work that you do? Why did you do this?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. For one is, and this is a lot of what we talked about in that first conversation we had, I have found like such really deep and meaningful healing for myself in these opportunities where I'm able to kind of just step out of the regular rat race of life and allow myself some space and quiet and solitude, and just how necessary that is for me, just for my general well-being and my health, just mental, emotional, all of it. And it's having done this for years now, I kind of sense a general rhythm of my own kind of the arc of my journey where I need to do this from time to time. I need to step out for an extended stretch. And thankfully I've created a life for myself when I can do that. I don't have, some of the restrictions and other things in life that would make that really challenging and really difficult. And for me, I've kind of orchestrated my life in a way that allows myself to take this time out. So that's one reason. But I mean, I could go do that anywhere. I could go sit in a cabin in the woods and not drink plant medicine, like you said, 4 nights a week. So the other part of it is, the work that I've done with these plants and with this medicine, it's put me on a very particular path that I really, it's has a lot of meaning for me. This is an important and essential part of my life to continue my own study and my own experience with plant medicine. And part of, one of the reasons why I've just felt so aligned and feel such a resonance with the Shipibo tradition is this is a big part of the tradition that has lasted for thousands and thousands of years. And that's this experience of isolation, of solitude, done so in a way where I'm opening myself up to connecting with plant consciousness, and it's not just ayahuasca, in this particular tradition. And there's so many ayahuasca traditions of, really these ancient technologies that have lasted for generations and that we have availability and access to now. There's so many that so many different approaches to this practice. And part of the reason why I have just resonated so much with the Shipibo tradition is this idea of plant diets and this practice of plant diets, I should say. And part of that is, we take this time, we step away from kind of the momentum of our life, and we step into solitude in a way to kind of quiet the noise, to so much of the diet experience is a lot of restrictions, restrictions on food, on technology, on all sorts of stimuli that just surround us every day. In this plant diet experience, part of the practice is for me to take a step back from all of that, give myself a little bit of space from a lot of these inputs and these stimuli and whatever they are, whether it's food, sex, social media, a lot of socializing, work, all of these things. And in doing so, it creates some capacity. It creates the space for myself to open up, not only open up to this medicine, not only open up to this tradition and this plant consciousness, but open up to myself.
Yeah.
And so many of these stimuli that I have in my life serve as distractions. And it's really difficult for me to identify and recognize, like, oh man, I'm kind of getting hooked in some of these patterns and some of these behaviors and addictions, whatever word we want to use. So when I can create this space for me to go and have some space from all of those, it frees up this capacity that I have to kind of go more further in, because so many of these distractions I have in my life are distracting me from myself. From these parts of me that are asking for my attention. These food, for example, I'll just use that because that's a pretty basic one for me. It's, I'm an emotional eater and have been my whole life. And when I kind of get into these patterns and these habits of relying on food to soothe, many times it's necessary. It's just, I got to function, I got to get up, I got to go to work. And sometimes things get hard, life gets tough, and things come up. Right. And I have, some very well-developed tools that I can reach for to help me in those times when life gets hard. One of them is food, And so when I can provide myself the opportunity to go into a place to get some space where I don't have to rely on food to be that which soothes me and that which helps me, I get an opportunity to see what it is that is uncomfortable that I'm using food to quiet and to distract myself from. And that's just an example. So, this practice of plant diets is to really open up to some of those things that are sometimes hard to hear, and to do so in a way where it's like, okay, I've created this space so I can look at some of these things. I'm really struggling in this area of my life where I'm unsure, I'm unclear about this particular relationship or this pattern or this cycle of behavior that I continually find myself in. So, and I know in my regular day-to-day life, I got a lot of things going on and a lot of responsibility and a lot of obligations. And I also have a lot of different ways that I can kind of navigate and self-soothe. So I'm going to just take a step back from all that and actually listen to what this confusion is trying to say, what this hurt, this sadness, this anger, whatever it is, and do so in a way that, in the center that I went to in Mexico and the center that I've been down to in Peru many times, this is part of where the tradition of this particular practice, like the Shipibo tradition, it offers like a framework, a tried and true, well-tested, well-practiced over literally thousands of years approach to investigating these things, to going into inner exploration. And what I find to be the most beneficial part about it is that I'm not doing it alone. There really is these plants have an intelligence, they have a consciousness, and it becomes this collaborative effort where, when I show up in my way and here's what I want to work on, here are my intentions, here's the thing that I want to spend this time down here to kind of open myself up to. And I open myself up in a way that allows this intelligence to introduce itself to me and collaborate with me. And in doing so, like, it's almost, I like to tell people this, like, ayahuasca, 9 times out of 10, simply holding up a mirror, all the visions, all of the fantastical experiences, all of the deep, dark nights of the soul, all of it, it's me.
Yeah. It's just me.
And it's just me. I can go to the farthest galaxy, talk to aliens, or deepest pits of hell, whatever. It's me. And
Well, what
so,
is that 1 time out of 10 then?
well, I think that 1 time out of 10 is the part where there is no me. There's no me, there's no you. It just is,
Yeah, you
like they
just go
talk
to the
about, like,
is.
yeah, it's the, that famous ego dissolution that I was searching for so long, and so many people want to go and have that peak experience where they just have total ego dissolution. I think that's for me, when I think of it, I think that's that 1 time out of 10. And those
Okay.
are amazing. Those are beautiful. And they offer such, but those other 9 times, that's when, for me, like, that's the real work, that's the meaningful work.
Yeah.
Because it's, this mirror that's being held up is able to show me parts of me that I don't normally see.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, it's this felt experience of, there is an exchange happening here. There's a collaboration. There's teamwork with the intelligence of this plant that I'm dieting. There's this intelligence of ayahuasca that is offering me this opportunity, and
Yeah.
it's not all, it's not some magic bullet or amazing cure to all of those things that haunt me and, that I
Right.
shuffle through my life with, but it's just, here's a perspective, here's a look,
Yeah. It
and
holds
what do
up
you see?
that mirror so you can see what it is you need to work on.
Right. And through the course of this diet, following this tradition, it's kind of like one layer at a time. And it's, I use the analogy a lot, like it's the diet grows like a plant grows. Most of it happens underground, kind of subconscious. And the beginning stages of it for me, very often, not always, but often, are really uncomfortable. Like, I'm just eating like a bowl of oatmeal and some rice and a little teeny fish, a couple plantains. Like, that's all I'm eating. There's no, not on my cell phone, not the busyness, the intensity of life isn't there. And that's what really shows me how accustomed I am to intensity, how
Yeah.
used to intensity I am. So when that's removed, it's just like, I got to do something. What am I doing? There's got to be something I can do right now. Like, I got to meditate harder. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to meditate for the day. And then I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go talk to my, it's like that busyness, that restlessness,
Yeah.
that life is, that is so filled in life. It's, for me, it's like the initial stages of just recalibrating myself to these rhythms, these more natural rhythms.
How long did it take you to squeeze that stuff out of you? When you go down there for a 3-month deal, how long does it take? And I'm asking because I recently did a very short hermitage out in the hills of New Mexico, and I felt myself get reset, but how long do you think it took you to kind of get reset away from this digital lifestyle into that internal lifestyle?
Well, this time I'd say, I don't know, the easy answer is that it's different every time. But this time I would say, it took me a couple weeks. It took, 3 solid weeks of, part of it was, the intention that I had gone down with, I felt very passionate about, like, wow, this is a big thing. There was a couple, as I was preparing for for this diet, just doing some of my own preparation work and gathering myself and getting myself ready. I really felt like I struck something, like, wow, this is the element of a really deep pattern, and it has a lot to do around my relationship with anger, or lack of relationship with anger, and wow, I'm really seeing how for so much of,
it really bubbled up to the surface, your intention.
Right. And so I felt like, wow, the soil is tilled and I'm ready. And so when I got down there, I was like, okay, here we go. I'm ready. Let's do this, and
Mm-hmm.
plants don't work at our speed. Nature is not interested, doesn't have a watch,
Right.
So there was, and that kind of for myself circled back around to this addiction to intensity, which is all right. I'm ready to do the hard work. Let's go. When
Mm-hmm.
in fact it was the opportunity just to appreciate some rest and relaxation,
Mm.
allow myself to dial down first and then calibrate. And so it took a little while, because I've done this
Yeah.
and I've done this a couple times now. I know the general arc of my process in this. So I was like, all right, I know how this works. Let's go. And it wasn't quite that way.
Yeah.
And of course, that was kind of the point. I think that was a bit of the message and the healing that I needed, was to experience that.
And you mentioned peeling the layers off, and one thing that, in our last off the record conversation, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned intentions, and and I had been getting to a point in my journeys that I felt like intentions were just a great big joke psychedelics were playing on me.
Mm-hmm.
But in this very intense program that you went through, I don't know if program's the right word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You went down there with an intention, and it became kind of your central grounding focus throughout that allowed those layers to peel later at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I kind of approach intentions as a compass,
Mm,
not an instruction manual or not a list of expectations. For me, an
yeah.
intention it helps me. That is what helps me calibrate to the experience. If I give you an example, if my intention is I just want to go down and I want to embody my highest self. I want to become like the most full expression of myself that I can be. For me, that's kind of broad. That's very
Hmm.
broad. And I've found, and I have full faith and trust in the medicine, that when we step forward with our intentions, medicine hears us and it's like, okay, here we go. Now, if my intention is really broad, if it's very like amorphous like that, I want to heal my inner child. I want
Hmm.
to forgive those who hurt me. It's like, all right, we can do that. But what I found more successful for myself is to find a way where, like I was saying a moment ago, like this is a pattern that I'm very aware of now. I have
Hmm.
this pattern, and a inability or just a complete lack of knowing about how to see anger as anything other than destructive. Like that was
Mm.
my story. Like I'm afraid to express anger because I'm going to turn into the Hulk and destroy the house. I'm
Yeah.
going to start flipping tables and screaming, and so just shove it and just quiet. Don't let that monster out. Keep that monster in the basement. Instead, be very accommodating. See the other person's side. See where it's what can I do differently? I should probably quiet down. I probably shouldn't say that. Like that's been the pattern. And
Yeah.
so there was, an experience I had that really brought that to light. And so it brought this question. It was more of a question than an intention. Like, wow, what's this about? Like, I can
Mm.
intellectualize and understand how anger is healthy. And there's actually there's so much vitality and strength in anger that is expressed in a healthy way. And, what I'm thinking is toxic is a little more on the toxic side. And so it's all intellectualized. I can write a good essay on it, but I don't feel it. I can't embody that. And I can't, I wasn't able to see how to translate that into a lasting and sustainable change in me.
Hmm.
So that was my intention. It was more just like, I'm curious about this. I kind of
That's
see
interesting.
these pieces on the board. And so that's how, for my practice, like an intention becomes a compass, because that allows whatever to be presented to me. I now have this lens to look at it through and
Hmm.
metabolize it and ask more questions. Like for the first, I'd say month plus, once I got settled and things started going, like everything I was experiencing to me at the time had nothing to do with anger. It's like, I don't really see how this is getting. I was like, what are we
Yeah.
doing here? But, this is my, all right, so something in here is leading me in this direction. If
Yeah.
I can trust that this experience and that I'm showing up in a good way, I'm showing up in a way that's respectful and with integrity towards this brilliant and vital tradition that I am blessed to even have an opportunity to experience. If I'm like doing my part to keep my diet straight and clean, so I'm if I'm showing up halfway, then I can trust that the medicine is showing up the other halfway. So even if I don't really get what I'm experiencing now, I mean, the first major experiences I had in this past diet was a lot of like early childhood memories of feeling lonely, and not really knowing how to, where to go and experience appreciation and love and acknowledgement. And it was sad. It was more sadness than anything, and at the time, I'm just thinking, all right, I know this idea that sadness and anger I heard it once explained, sadness and anger are siblings, and one looks out for the other, and for some people, the feeling of sadness is really easy to tap into. Like sadness can just, that's an emotion that has easy access. And anger, I mean, that's been my experience. And other people are just the opposite. For some people, like, man, they can get to that place of, the hair stands up or they stand up for themselves, and that anger is really present. But to lean into sadness is a real challenge, so it kind of can go either way. So I was just seeing so much experience for myself of sadness, and not really, if I were to sit and journal as I did so many times, like, all right, I want to work on anger, but boy, am I just seeing a lot of like really sad things in my life. And and just trust, like, we're moving in this direction. My compass is guiding me in this direction. And this is, so where can I find the links? Where can I continue to ask this question about what does this have to do? What is this showing me about my relationship to anger? And that's how I work with that intention, so it's less about, I want to work on XYZ. I want to do this, check those boxes, mission accomplished, like a good little Western student in school to get an A, whereas instead it's like the intention is what opens the door.
Yeah. And you went in with a question. You opened the door with a question and then left yourself open to learning what you needed to learn. And then you took those lessons and kind of meditated on them to say, okay, what did this mean? How does this help me answer my question? Is that kind of the process? Yeah.
I mean, so much of like the biggest parts of my experience happened just in the middle of the day, 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, sitting in my hammock. It wasn't always in the ceremony with plant medicine and this incredibly powerful consciousness. It was in the reflection. It was in the digestion of those experiences where a lot of the really deep material would come up. And a lot of it was, to kind of follow along with this idea of intention. It's, understanding that it's just like one of my all-time favorite Joseph Campbell quotes, and I got a lot of them, but he said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And so it's like when I was feeling, oh, I don't know if I want to look at that. Oh man, I remember this memory. Oh, this wasn't a good one. Aha. That's where we got to go. Like what's behind there then? And this feeling of resistance, this feeling of guilt, shame, blame, all of it turned inwards, like recognize those are the protectors. They were guardians that I asked to stand at that gate so I don't have to go back into that experience and feel what I felt. So when I feel shame or like, oh, I don't want to look at that, or, oh, I'm not worthy, it's like, okay, then I don't, when I go back into these more comfortable patterns, even if those comfort zones aren't serving me well. There was an old story that I told myself that said, if I go back and look at this or allow this feeling to come up, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get rejected or abandoned, So don't. And I'll hurt myself instead first. So here's shame, here's guilt, here's blame. Because if I hurt myself, I back away, and then nobody else. I won't have to get hurt by anybody else. I won't have to be abandoned by anybody else if I do it first.
And those resistances, they come up during during ceremonies and during processing afterwards?
Oh yeah, well they do for me. they
Yeah.
are they're I mean, especially in the state that, and this is kind of the brilliance of the dieta tradition, is we're in such a, like, I don't want to say fragile, we're in such an exposed and such a vulnerable place,
Mm-hmm.
energetically, emotionally, mentally, because we're in a pretty extreme environment, not eating much. We're in, I'm having to clear out scorpions and spiders from my room, and I can't, I don't really have access to some of the creature comforts. So like it kind of just wears down a lot of the defenses by design. It's
Mm-hmm.
not torturous. It's not like we're being punished. I'm not being like, it's uncomfortable, but that's the idea. That's part of the idea, because
Yeah.
that all of these defenses, all of these different ways that I use to protect myself, I don't have access to. So surrender. It's the only thing left to do is just surrender
Surrender.
to it. Mm-hmm.
Normally I ask somebody, and I asked you last time, normally I ask people to share, if they want to, maybe some details of an experience. But it sounds to me like this whole trip down to Mexico was like one big experience. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if there's any details, any specific ceremony or journey you wanted to share, or if you wanted to maybe give a summary as to what the whole summer ended up. I don't know if it's the summer, the whole 3 months
Mm-hmm.
ended up meaning to you. And I don't know if you've had time to process something that big, but I mean, if you had to look back and say, okay, here's kind of what happened to me, here's what I went through, here's what I learned, here are the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a grasp on that yet?
Um, yeah, I mean, I have a grasp on what I'm grasping at the moment. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
always, these things just continue to unfold, like life continues to unfold, and
Mm-hmm.
things become more clear as more time and more lived experiences are gathered. But one thing that was really, really clear when I completed my experience there and was coming home was I kind of got to look at a pretty significant childhood trauma that I experienced at a,
Mm.
fourth grade, fifth grade, and
Yeah.
it was one of those things where it wasn't like some repressed memory that was just hidden from me forever and ever. And it came up, oh, suddenly, oh no, it wasn't like that. It was something I was very aware of, but I had for my entire life assumed and accepted it as I deserved it. I
Mm.
deserved to be punished for that thing, you know?
Yeah.
And as an 8-year-old or 10-year-old or however old I was, my capacity for understanding like right and wrong and punishment, a little
Mm-hmm.
different than a 40-year-old, you know?
Yes.
But when I would look back on that experience, I looked at it through the eyes of an 8-year-old and was just like,
Mm.
yeah, I deserved it. I was bad, and I deserved to
Mm-hmm.
be punished. And the experience, and it was one particular memory that came up probably about halfway through, but that particular memory fueled nearly the entire experience. Just this one
Hmm.
moment in my life, maybe all of 3.5 minutes, and just how much that experience set the tone and the pattern for so much of my life lived with unworthiness, with
Mm.
shame, with
Wow.
this feeling that I am undeserving and
Yeah.
unlovable. And so there was a lot to unpack,
Yes.
and there continues to be unpacked. But when I left, it was this acknowledgement for myself that, it is healthy, it is normal, it is natural to want love, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to reach for connection. That's not a
Yeah.
bad thing, In fact, it's a life affirming thing.
Yeah.
If
It's
you
a
want to,
beautiful thing.
it's a beautiful thing, And the fact that that 8 or 10-year-old was
Mm-hmm.
what that little boy was trying to do in order just to experience love and
Mm.
receive love and share love, that wasn't something to be ashamed of. That wasn't something bad or wrong, you
Yeah.
know and seeing how that, because in that experience I was punished for expressing love, to the extent that I knew it as an 8-year-old. Again, like, I mean, I loved Ninja Turtles when I was 8 too. You know, it's not
Right.
like I had a real well-rounded understanding of what that emotion was, but I knew what it
Yeah.
was that I was trying to do, you know,
Yeah.
and I was punished for it. I was scolded and told that I was wrong and bad for that. And to, you know, 30 something years later, in the middle of the jungle, you know, with all of this amazing, you know, plant medicines and consciousness around me, and just the extent of
Yeah.
my own journey to get there, it was pretty profound, you know.
Yeah. So you go in with that intention, and one of the mirrors that was held up was, hey, you need to re-examine this traumatic
Mm-hmm.
memory and understand it
Mm-hmm.
for its true essence, and not what you've been labeling it as your whole life.
Right. Right.
Wow. And then the rest of your journeys grew, the layers got peeled off of from that intention and from that first insight.
Correct. You know, it's like it was a pretty miraculous experience, because there I was, because again, it happened during the day when this memory came back to me. You know, I was
Yeah,
just
so
sitting
not
in
even
my
in the middle of
hammock,
the ceremony, just you just sitting
not
in your
even,
hammock and
yep, just like, you know, I'm just connecting with this plant and doing the things that I have kind of learned for myself to do to facilitate the diet. And then boom, here it comes, like this fully experienced memory, you know?
yeah.
And I recalled the event that happened, and in my body, in that moment, in that hammock, I was terrified. Like I was
Mm.
frozen with
Wow.
fear, just like I was 30
Yeah.
something years ago,
That
you
physical
know,
part
like
came back.
exactly, like the somatic experience of that trauma, literal trauma, you know, no
Mm-hmm.
exaggeration. Anytime, you know, an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old is scolded at by a caregiver, it's traumatic. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
don't need to try to like sort that out too hard.
Yeah.
That was, you know, the bodily felt experience of that was still in my body as a
Mm-hmm.
40-year-old, you know. So here I am, you know, all my white hairs in my beard and wrinkles in my eyes, acting like an 8-year-old, like frozen in fear, you know,
Wow.
just by simply recalling this memory in association with what I've been working on down there. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first step in that process for me was to, like, I had to kind of work from there, you know, allow this 8-year-old this body has been holding on to that energy, that emotion for 30 something years, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
intellectually I could in that moment talk my way through it, and yes, you know, I didn't deserve it, and then it was okay, but that's not going to do anything, you know. It serves a purpose, but it's not going to do much to help that body release this stored trauma, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
so like that's a layer, you know, just allowing the body to release, and just allowing that energy just to finally be dissipated.
Mm.
Because for me, back in that experience, like it just felt like total danger. It was like I might as well have been face down by a lion in that moment,
Yeah.
you know. And so fight, flight, or freeze, and I chose froze, and that stayed in the body.
Mm.
And then every time similar experiences happened over the course of my life that brought up this experience of feeling that wanting for love or reaching for connection is bad. There it is again, frozen. 8-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter from 16, 26, 36, 40. That energy is still responding to what is felt as a threat, which is
Yeah.
if I reach for love, if I want to share my heart, that's dangerous. Don't do that. Freeze. So
Yeah.
that takes a long time. It took me a long time to unwind that. And it's still unwinding. But that's what I mean by like these layers come off, because
Yeah.
now that I have access to what has been buried for 30 something years, it's like, whoa, it may have been buried, but the program was running full steam this whole time,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. You just couldn't recognize it.
That's right. Because it was assumed that that's just that was truth.
Yeah, that's
You know,
normal.
that's normal. I don't
Yeah.
deserve love. I'm wrong for wanting it. So how
Yeah.
would I think to act any other way?
Man. Yeah, that's something. I can tell you, as somebody who's been through some pretty intense therapy, it could take me a year or two to get a lesson like what you got.
Hmm.
down there in Mexico. That's pretty amazing.
Hmm.
Um, so you, I know you also do integration coaching, and I know
Hmm.
it is really great of you. You also have an integration coach you work with.
Hmm.
Uh, so when you come back with a lesson like this, and you come back with the new interaction with these plant consciousnesses, and this
Hmm.
notion to open up all this stuff, what do you start doing, and how has this affected your coaching plans? As you work
Hmm.
with your own clients and you think about integration, how has this latest long journey impacted your notion of integration and integration processes and those kind of things?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. That's for sure.
Yeah.
One really big piece that came back with me was, it's kind of like this, the very reasons that I said at the beginning of our conversation why I go do this, like to kind of step out, step away from the this track of life and the intensity of life and all of these things. Well, when it's all said and done, it's exactly where I go back to. you know
Mm-hmm.
it's like coming down off the mountain back into the village where all of the crises and the struggles and the beauty and the connection and the friends and the coworkers and got to pay taxes and take out the trash and all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It definitely is a re-entry process.
Mm-hmm.
And um one thing that it really just kind of lined up for me on this most recent experience is, I come home and there were some pretty intense things going on in my life. Like upon landing back in Phoenix, I just
Mm-hmm.
spent this time in the jungle and haven't worn shoes in 3 months, and here I am, and there's like, whoa, there were a couple really, really intense things, both personally, interpersonally, and it was a real shock to my system. It was
Mm-hmm.
very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I was still in such a very open and vulnerable place just from what I'd done, that it was overwhelming and destabilizing,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like I had to immediately address some of these very real and present things that were going on. And then, and I did, and things settled down and things were worked out, and it's all good. And then it was like, oh geez, well now I'm home and now I got to go back to work. Now the rhythm of life it has to kick up again. And I noticed, the very things that I want healing and clarity on are still here, you know,
Mm-hmm.
still struggle with food a little bit. I still don't know about work, relationship, what's it going to be like? And it's kind of a very natural reaction that I have of like, oh no, it's all still here. I thought,
Yeah.
I know it's not a magic bullet, but I thought maybe this time,
Yeah.
this would be the diet where it all works out. And that's a very normal process. But what I
Mm-hmm.
just I saw for myself was like, yeah, it's always going to be here. There's always going to be something, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
money or the job or relationships or self-care. There's always going to be something that doesn't feel quite in alignment. That feels off, that I want to do better, that I want to change. Like that is always going to be there. I'm what's different. Like I'm what is different in this equation
Mm-hmm.
after this
Mm-hmm.
experience, you
Yeah.
know? And good thing, because I'm the only thing I have influence over.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to
Yeah.
control what happens with the state of the union and the world and the environment. Like there's things that are so far out of my control that it just puts me back into that space of trauma to even try to figure out like what can I do to change these things, or with work or relationships. But me, like I am what is different in this experience of life that we all go through, you know?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that for me is like the first, or an insight into integration, in terms of realizing like there's gonna be struggles when you come back. Like doesn't matter if you go for 3 months or 3 hours or 3 years, like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be hard to come back. And I am what's different in this equation. I have something different. I am changed. My perspective has changed. My capacity to show up into these challenging things are different. My skills
Yeah.
and my own knowing of myself is what allows me to do hard things. And so for me, and this is what I tell people I work with, and I tell myself every time, like the first step of integration is celebration. Like celebrate the fact that I just had this really amazing experience. Celebrate the fact that I have a life that allows that I get to do these types of things, that I have the support of friends and family, that the choices that I've made in the past to cultivate this life for myself allowed me to do this. Celebrate that. Celebrate that I have things to integrate. Great, wonderful. Celebrate I've got all these new things about me. Like, yeah, I learned a whole lot, and now I've got even more questions, you know?
Right.
And good thing, because now there's still stuff to look at and there's still things to do, you know?
Yeah.
Celebrate that.
I love it. I love it. Anything else on the integration before I jump into the next and final subject?
Oh, plenty, but we can talk that in the third one.
All right, that sounds good. So I get a lot of inquiries from people that are looking to have an authentic, deep ayahuasca experience, and they want to know, they hear the horror stories of things going wrong with certain places in South America. And I know there's places in like in Mexico where you were, in Costa Rica and Peru and Colombia. Do you have any advice for somebody out there listening that's like, hey, I want to experience an authentic Shipibo tradition ayahuasca ceremony? Do you have any recommendations for them to help them find the right type of a place, or to avoid the wrong kind of a place?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is get clear on why you want to go in the first place. Do you want to go because you want to have the experience? You want to go and do the jungle thing and, be out there and have the full, Amazon jungle experience with the medicine and all of these adventures? Then that's totally fine. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. That is an experience of itself. That's one way to go. Another way to go is because you're looking for healing. Is there, kind of like what we've been talking about, there are some psychedelics and plant medicine offer an avenue into healing, not curing, not fixing, but an avenue into healing. And if that's a direction you want to go in, okay, be clear with that. Do you want to go because you want to like learn, you want to train, you feel called to work with this medicine in a more authentic and respectful way, because there's plenty of ways to sit with ayahuasca these days.
Yeah.
But do you want to go? And so these, just get clear on why you want to go in the first place.
Right.
And from there, there's a lot of, there's basically like ayahuasca Yelp reviews now, like Aya Advisors is a website that offer or has, reviews from pasajeros who've gone down to different places. That's a good way to kind of get an idea, do some research, look into it. If you've heard about a couple places, do some research for yourself, because the last thing I would recommend anybody do is just go down there and see how it happens. I wouldn't advise that. But I think the most important or the best way that I've found for myself, and I've seen it be most effective for others, is talk to people you trust who have gone and done this themselves. If you don't know them, ask them. If there's a lot of, very well-spoken and well-practiced and well-experienced Western practitioners all over the world now. And they all, for the most part, have done some or a fair amount of their training down in the Amazon, where the tradition is still held. So like, who do you resonate with? When you are opening yourself to the idea of going down to Peru, like, who's inspiring you to do this? Is it people you know? Perhaps it's a book you read or a podcast you heard with someone who really kind of spoke in a way that resonated with you. And then ask questions, inquire, but do it in such a way that it's like you're getting this real human, one-on-one personal connection to it. Go to the people you trust, like, because the people who come back and carry the medicine with them are the best example of the medicine of that place. And so I shouldn't say it that way. Let me say it a different way. Look to the people who work with this medicine that you resonate with, that you're like, yeah, I like the way the person does it. I like the way they carry themselves. I like
Right.
how, they have respect for what they're doing, or perhaps a way that they're able to incorporate it into their lives. Not, if they got a really flashy website or they talk a good game, but how do they live their life? Like
Yeah.
look to those people who resonate with you in a good way, and then ask, like, where did you go? Where did you go?
Yeah. You had a good experience. How did you go about this?
Right. I kind of like how you carry yourself, beyond the talky talk, the way that
Yeah.
you show up in your community, the way that you show up to your friends and your family, the way that you show up to people like me who are coming to you asking a question. Are you presenting yourself as this all great and powerful, look at me? Or is there some humility and reality to what you're sharing? I want to go in this direction,
Yeah. There you go. That's it right there, I think. Yeah. Perfect. So is there anything else you want to put out there? Anything else you want people to know about, or any resources you want to share? Any other thoughts?
Sure. If people want to visit my website, it is originalmythology.com. From there, you can reach out if you're inquiring, if you'd like to discuss more or see what services I offer.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm fortunate to be a part of a project that I'm very passionate about, that's organized down here in Phoenix, and that's the Church of the Eagle and the Condor.
Mm-hmm.
And we could spend a whole other hour talking about that, but to keep it brief, it's an effort being put on by a number of very, very special people, and with a lot of integrity and care for the direction that not only this medicine, but these ancestral traditions, putting a path forward to help bring these to the generations to come. So if people want to learn more about the Church of the Eagle and the Condor, you can search that, Church of the Eagle and the Condor.com. And I'm really passionate and fully support, and am honored to be, in the extent that I am, a part of this project. So I would just put
It's
that
an
out there for
amazing
people to
project.
look up
I
to.
did get to interview those guys, not for this podcast, but I think for shakruna.net, and they're just amazing human beings. So you guys doing that, it's a great church.
Yeah. And it's churchofeagleandcondor.org.
Okay. All right. I'll put that in the notes, everybody.
Great.
So you can just click right from there. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this amazing story. It's always nice to talk to you, but this was truly an amazing experience that we're all going to learn from. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing it.
Thank you so much, Stuart. This is great. And I look forward to the next coffee and then doing this again.
Yeah, me too. Me too, brother.
Okay, my friend.
That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening, and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.